Oh, hi. Welcome everyone, and thank you very much, Fritz, for that introduction. And welcome to my talk, running your first Twitch extension, an intro cooking guide. And just in case we have audio issues, I made sure to add closed captioning to the bottom of my stream just in case, so you guys will be able to follow along as we go through this. So all right, so let's get into this. I got my fancy pointer cursor and everything. All right. So Fritz already gave me an introduction, but I'll just introduce myself again. I am talk2MeGooseman, Eric Guzman. I am a full stack engineer at Zeal, a Microsoft MVP, a Twitch extension developer, a Twitch streamer, and a lover of anime, manga, webtoons, and light novels. And a couple of the things you see in the little cells there are extensions I made, like the stream closed captioner and the stream team extension. So let's get into it. So this is an introductory guide to get everyone's feet wet on what a Twitch extension is and how to build one. So let's start off. What is a Twitch extension? So what they are, a web page that sits inside Twitch and communicates with Twitch to provide extra functionality. Why they are: it allows for streamers to easily enhance the experience of their stream for viewers by using things like sound alerts, games, info overlays, and much, much more. All it boils down to, folks, is it's just an iframe that contains a website. It's just a tiny little website that gets loaded onto the screen. That's all it is. It's as simple as that. Nothing sophisticated at all. So, if you wanted to get started making a Twitch extension, what's the minimum knowledge that's required? You should know a little bit of HTML. You should know a little bit of JavaScript. You should know a little bit of CSS, and just a smidge of API. It's about APIs, servers, or Twitch's term of EBS, which is just backend services. It's optional to know how to build your own server, but if you want to build high-powered extensions, it's the best way to go to roll your own backend server and get the best features out of it. So, what's required before we start cooking and make our own Twitch extension? First, we have to log in and we have to we have to link our Twitch user to our Twitch dev account. So if you already have a Twitch login, you're already half the battle. You're already halfway there. You just have to log in with you just have to go to dev.twitch.tv or dev.twitch. That's a typo, .tv, and load up the page, log in with your account. And then after that, it's going to force you to enable two-factor authentication, because we don't want anyone accidentally getting access to your Twitch account and somehow being able to do something malicious with your applications and such. All right, so creating a Twitch extension. The first thing you need to do is you need to go on the Twitch dev website, and you're greeted with the button to create a Twitch extension. So you start a Twitch extension, and the first thing you do is come up with a name for your extension. And the thing to remember with this is that your extension name is globally unique. So even though if you follow the Twitch dev guide and theirs is like they give you a name of Hello World to use, don't do that. It needs to be something universal. So it can be, for me, like Gooseman extension or something like that. But the thing is that when you name your extension, that is going to be the name that everyone sees about your extension. So don't give it like some filler name and do all this work to build it out. Think about it at the high level of how, like, when someone goes to the app page to install it, what do they see? What are they going to say? What's the name that they're going to see that they want to make them want to install your Twitch extension? All right. So now the next thing you need to do is we need to cover the version mold, the thing that wraps your extension, what the capabilities are. That's what I call the mold. The first thing is your client ID, and you don't have to worry about A very common thing that when you're first starting a build extension is people think that like, oh no, I have to hide my client ID. Don't worry about that. Client ID is 100% public. Don't worry about people being able to see it being in your code, because that is everyone. That's the name of, that's like the code to the coded name to your extension, and everyone can see that. So don't worry about that. So we need our client ID. You need to decide what extension type you want your extension to be. There's a multitude of different extension types: panel, video overlays, video components, mobile. I'll get into that in a few slides. And then you have to fill in your extension info in order to get started with your very first extension. These are all required things. This is the first thing you see when you first create your extension. So now getting in more detailed into this. So I mentioned those 4 different types of extension styles. They're the flavors of your extension that people will taste when they're trying out your extension. The first one is the video overlay. So the video overlay takes up the entire screen of a broadcaster's video. So the very common one, like if you went to watch the Overwatch League games, they had a big overlay extension with all sorts of information. That's a video overlay extension. I believe there's a CSGO one. Basically all the big competitive things on Twitch, those use video overlays. Those take up the whole video. They're the most interactive. But the thing is also a broadcaster can only install one of those. So they are high priced real estate. So unless you have a really good idea for your extension, you might not get good traction if you choose to do a video overlay for your extension. So be very mindful. If you really want people to use your extension, you have to start thinking about how you want to position your extension from usability standpoint. So video overlay is the most expensive real estate, so it might be the most difficult to get traction on. Now, the video component. So the video component sits on the video also, but it sits over the edge. So we can see in this preview image, well, you can kind of see it, it's a little covered, but on the right side of a person's stream, there's this little panel, these little buttons, and if you click on it, it pops out a little window. That's a video component. So it's like a little section, a little box, a little home over the video that your extension lives in. So this is very convenient in terms of some visibility because it's over the video. The downside is that it doesn't show by default. People have to know to click it. So it's a little bit better for visibility, but at the same time, people have to know to click it. So you have to make sure to position the value of this extension to be something that people would want to use, or the broadcaster would want to encourage a viewer to use. Now the panel extension. The panel extension lives below the video. So we have the top of the video, like you're watching me right now. If you were to scroll down, you would see all these different panels, and that's where it would live. I believe right now, actually, on the Live Coders channel, there is a panel extension which happens to be mine. That is the Twitch Stream Team one. So that's where the panel extensions live, and you can do a lot of cool things with that. I think there's sound controls in my Stream Teams extension. Those ones are a little bit more flexible. They're not as visible initially because you have to scroll down, but they're great flexible extensions in terms of viewability, and I guess and they're not as competitive because a user can have up to, I believe, 3 panel extensions installed. So they're not as expensive in terms of real estate. So a broadcaster can install multiple of those. And then finally, there is the mobile extensions. So mobile extensions are very similar to the panel extension. What I've done personally is actually just reuse my panel extension code for my mobile, because when you load it up on mobile, it's just a long view like a panel, and it shows up in iOS and Android, with the caveat being that in order for it to show on iOS, you need to email Twitch and give them your Apple developer account, because Apple will not allow them to enable your extension unless they know who you are as a developer. So that's a caveat. You get it for free in Android, but if you want to release it on Apple, there's a little bit of more of a hurdle to jump over if you wanted to dive into that. All right, so now that we have all this information about the extension, how to create an account, what the different type of flavors of extensions that exist, let's get cooking and let's start getting into how we'll make our first extension. So the extension ingredients that we need is we need a little bit of HTML for the different views for the ones that we covered. We need a little bit of CSS. You can use a little bit of CSS to make your extension pop, look visually beautiful. You need a little bit of JavaScript if you want to use some sort of UI, library, framework, fetch some APIs, or use some really cool Twitch features. And you'll also need something else called the Twitch extension helper. And the Twitch extension helper is a JavaScript library that runs inside your extension. Without it, your extension won't work. And we'll get to that in a couple slides. All right. So the first thing is when we're cooking up our extension, we got to work on our base, our HTML. We need to make those views. So if you're going to be making there are 6 different views when you make an extension. There's our video overlay view. And we covered that sits over the video. But the thing to remember with the video overlay views also is that you can't put links in a video overlay view. So if you want to have, them to be able to go, let's say go to GitHub, or let's say go to the Live Coders website. You can't do that. Sorry, they don't allow you over the videos. For the component, we've covered that. That sits on the right side of your video. You click a little button to show it. You can't do links on that one either. Because it's over the video, Twitch guidelines, they just don't want it. We have the panel view. If you want to make a template for the panel view, in the panels, links are allowed. So you can do, like for the Stream Teams extension below the screen, if you scroll to the bottom, you check out the various team members on the Live Coders team. You can click on any one of those profile pictures and it would take you to the channel. So we can do links there. On mobile, links are kind of allowed. It's a little tricky, but links are allowed on mobile. Now there's 2 other views that are new here that I have yet to cover, and it is the config page where links are allowed and the live config page. So I said config page. What the heck is config page? So the config page is a page specifically for broadcasters. So if you, the broadcaster, were to go to the extensions page and you were to try to install an extension, you'll see a little gear icon right there. If you click on that gear icon, it'll pop open this modal, this window over, and it would display a configuration for your extension for the broadcaster to use. And in this case, for my Stream Team extension, it shows a bunch of instructions. It allows you to pick your team, in this case, the Live Coders. And then I have it configured for displaying a panel preview of what it would look like if they chose the team. So these HTML pages are your oyster. You can do whatever you want. You can throw in Tabasco, salt, pepper, whatever, you style it however you want to do it. This is for you to communicate the easiest way to set up your extension. This is a very important page because this is the page that after they install your extension that they're going to go to. And if this page isn't as easy as possible to set up your extension, you might lose them and they'll just uninstall it. So be mindful, think about usability, think about user experience, think about what works and what doesn't. Try to simplify and make it as easy as possible. Step-by-step guides like I did. So the config page is if the broadcaster needs to set up their extension. And then the live config page is something a little extra for the broadcasters on the broadcaster page. Unfortunately, Twitch made this a little bit more difficult to use now, but if you're on your live dashboard, I guess it's just called the dashboard now, and under quick actions, you can add just like with the other actions for your stream, you can add on the dashboard little quick actions to go to the live config. So the only difference is it's a configuration page for when the broadcaster is currently live. And in my case, for my stream closed captioner extension, I have it just open up to the already existing configuration page. And if they need to go to the companion website, it's right there. So they don't have to go all the way to the extensions page, click the gear icon. Instead, all they have to do is click this guy right here and click visit the URL, and that would open up on into the to the stream closed captioner page for them to use closed captioning right away. All right, so I covered the different HTML pages that you would need, but there's one thing that I mentioned, the Twitch extension helper. I put an asterisk in the previous slide, one of the previous slides, because this is 100%, you need this in your HTML markup. If you do not have this in your HTML markup, your extension will not work. Twitch will actually reject it if you try to submit it. So you always need this helper, even if you're not using any JavaScript in your extension. If it's just HTML and CSS presentation, you need this JavaScript helper in there or they will reject it. Actually, I don't even believe the extension will load if you don't have this in there. And I will add, this is one of the most common problems people have when they're making their extension. They'll write it up, they'll do features for it and all that type of stuff, and then they'll go into the Twitch Dev Discord and ask, why isn't my extension loading? And that's because they forgot to add the helper or they removed it from a boilerplate. So, okay, so we covered the standard HTML of it's a standard HTML, and now we want to kind of zest things up. We've created the HTML. It's not really doing anything fancy. It's static. So we're going to add a little bit of JavaScript to spice up the cooking of our extension. So, to spice up the cooking of our extension, we can use different components. So using JavaScript, we can hook into the JavaScript from our from the Twitch library. So twitch.extension.onAuthorized. And basically what this does is this will fire off telling us that, hey, Twitch has loaded our extension. It's good to go. Do stuff with your extension. And in this case, in this JavaScript example, what I'm doing here is after onAuthorized fires off, I append to the bottom and I append onto the DOM that Twitch authorized, and it gives us a little UID, and it just adds a little hello class to it. The other things you can do with the JavaScript is you can also use it to connect to APIs. So if you need, if you want to build a weather extension, you can, hit the Open Weather API or other APIs. But the best important thing is, the Twitch JavaScript helper. It adds a load of functionality for you to use. It does a lot of awesome things. And the first thing you should do is the onAuthorized call to fire everything off. That's telling you time, everything's cooking, time to run. Yeah. Okay. So now we got the HTML. We got the JavaScript. So we got the JavaScript here. We got the HTML over here saying that's a video overlay with our with our extension helper right there. And so now we need to actually get things running. So a very common thing about when people are first starting doing Twitch extension development, especially beginners, is how do I see my web page? So you need to in order to do that, you need to get things up and running in a local server. You got to get the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript running on your computer. So what you can do is you can try using a handy dandy command called npx HTTP server. That's one way to do it right here. And that's if you have Node 8 or greater. Another way to do that is you can try using a bundler that does does a dev server like Webpack. But the key is that you need to have your extension, your assets running in a little server in order to reach them. So that's the first thing you need to do. HTTP server is the easiest way to do that. And there's some other boilerplate stuff that will help you do that, and I'll share that at the end of the talk. Okay, so I talked about creating the HTML. I talked about writing a little bit of JavaScript just to display stuff on the page. So now we want to, and then I talked about running the assets when in the code. But now we want to actually try to view our extension running, and we want to get this to run as close, emulate the Twitch environment as closely as possible. And that's where the developer rig that Twitch developed comes in. It allows us to do local and hosted taste testing of the extension that we are building, so we can see whether it tastes just right, whether it's working so good. So the developer rig allows the extension developers to develop and test extensions quickly, easy, and locally. It's an Electron wrapped web app that you install on your machine and lets you test with production APIs and hosted assets on Twitch. So it emulates all the different views for the extension. So it emulates the live config, the mobile, the panel, the video overlay, and the video component. All the views, it emulates all those. And it also emulates the JavaScript events that come from the Twitch extension, the Twitch JavaScript helper. So that unauthorized call that was pointing out that Twitch will call when your extension's good to go, it'll emulate that. So this is definitely a must if you want to test your extension easily without having to. We'll cover how to do it hosted, but okay. So I introduced you to developer rig. Now we want to get riggy with it. So we need to do the initial setup. So first thing you need to do is you need to download it. So it's really easy to download. Once you've created your version of your extension that we covered earlier, you'll be greeted with your initial page. And at the bottom, close to the bottom, you'll have a direct link to the developer rig. So you just got to click that and it'll go and download it. Now, the next thing, you want to set up you want to double check your extension's testing URL, testing base URI. So by default, Twitch sets this to HTTPS, but it could be, when you're first starting off, it's going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt to run an HTTPS server locally. So based off the instructions that I've given you so far of running HTTP server or using Webpack Dev Server, you can just switch this to HTTP. So I would suggest just starting off that you go and you just go in here and you just set this to HTTP localhost 8080. So do that, click save. So that's the URL that Twitch knows when you're testing it locally that we're gonna hit this URL. And then finally, open up your developer rig. So you've downloaded it, you click it, and you got to open up your developer rig, and you just create a brand new project. It's really easy. You log in, and there's a button at the top that says create new project. So in this screenshot right here, I am in the create new project. I'm creating the talk2MeGooseman talk. It automatically knows, since we went through the extra steps of creating an extension and on creating extension project on the dashboard on Twitch Dev, you can click the drop down and you'll see it right there. So I created so it knew about my talk2MeGooseman talk, and then it automatically fills in the version of 0.01. Okay, so more steps. So it displays the current, so once we get that all set up, you get the initial page. Everything looks good. It gives your extension name. It gives your client ID. It gives you the type of extension you have. It might be a little bit hard to read, so sorry about that. But the one thing that I made sure this big red button points at is under version, there's this update button. This is probably one of the most important buttons that you need to know about in the developer rig right here. Anytime you make changes to your extension settings on the dev.twitch.tv site, make sure to press that update button, because the dev rig will go and fetch that information from the Twitch dev website about all the information about how your extension's configured, and pull that down and store that so it knows how to properly run your extension. So remember that. Remember that button. Now, after you've done that, now we create our views. So in the menus, there is a menu for adding views. And this is where we go through and we create our extension views. So you just create, there's a big old button once you go into the extension views section of the dev rig. There's a big button that says create new views. If you click that, you get a menu. And the menu will display the various views that you've configured your extension for. So if you want to see it as a panel, if you want to preview your overlay code, your component code, your mobile code, your configuration page, it's all there. It's all there. So you can go ahead and you can click that and you can click save. There's a bunch of other settings in there too that I can't even go into covering because it's going to take forever. There's a lot of stuff going on here. And then finally, once you click save, you'll get a preview of a test view of your extension. So all that code we've written so far for our extension for the HTML, we didn't know CSS because we don't need no CSS for this one, and JavaScript. Now we get this view for your panel, and then on it, the onAuthorize is called, and it appended that information there. So it emulates the onAuthentication call and emulates a bunch of different features that the Twitch library, JavaScript library has to offer. So it's, the developer rig is awesome for testing in. Okay, so now that was local testing. Now there is the concept of hosted testing. Hosted testing is like, the best way I can put it, it's like testing on a staging environment. It's your near production environment. So far, what we've done is we've been running the extension locally, running on a local server, running on your computer. That's fine, but now we need to actually test that everything works when all the code, all the assets are living on Twitch. So in order to reach hosted testing mode, there's a big old button that says move to hosted testing on the dashboard on dev.twitch.tv. But what you need to do in order to be able to click that button is you need to be able to zip up your assets. So in order to move to hosted testing, you zip up all your assets and upload them to your extension dashboard. After you've uploaded your extension, your assets to the extension dashboard, all you have to do is click that button, and then you move on to testing, and then you can move on to hosted testing. But one thing I want to say that's always a gotcha for anyone, for all new developers with in extension development, is wherever your assets are living, whatever folder they happen to be in, do not zip the folder. Don't zip the folder. What you need to do is you need to go into the folder, grab all the assets, and zip those. Do not zip the folder, zip the files themselves. This happens to everyone all the time. Another common issue that happens on the Twitch Dev Discord, that people come in saying, hey, why aren't my assets working? Why aren't they being served up? They work locally, but they don't work on on hosted testing. That's the main reason. So remember that. Remember that. That's bitten me in the butt the very first time I was making an extension. Okay, so some general tips. So here are a couple tips to make sure your extension works and follows the Twitch guidelines. So all your assets must be included with your extension. So let's say, right now our extension is very lean. All we have is some HTML, all we have is some JavaScript. But let's say if you're going to use Bootstrap for the UI. Let's say we're going to use Font Awesome because we wanted some nice icons. Usually when you go to the guides, all they say is like, oh, if you want to use Bootstrap, if you want to use Font Awesome, just put in the CDN URL and it'll automatically load into your page. And that's wonderful. That's really easy. That's great to use. But You can't do that when submitting things to Twitch. Twitch does not want you to outward link to assets. It's a security issue, right? Because there's no guarantee that those outward linking assets are going to be secure forever. So you must download and have all those assets bundled locally on your extension. There are some caveats. Google Fonts is okay, and Google Analytics is okay. Believe there's one more, but Google Fonts is the major plus one. So you got to make sure that those are all bundled with your stuff. I think the one thing that doesn't have to be bundled is images. But I can be mistaken. But so once you're bundling all your, when you're bundling all your assets together, the other thing you have to watch out for is and it's part of the guidelines, is you need to make sure to separate your assets, your own HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code from your library code. So you need to make sure that they're completely separate, so Twitch can review your code, and because Twitch doesn't care, and Twitch will, know that your other dependencies are whatever, because you don't have control over those dependencies. So they want to be able to read your code, parse your code, and understand what you've written versus what Lodash, what Bootstrap has written, what Font Awesome does. So make sure you have to bundle those separately, keep them in separate files. If you're using like a bundler like Webpack and stuff like that, that will weave them all into one single file. You need to configure it so that they're in two separate files, your app code and then the vendor code. And then the other thing is, do not obfuscate your code. So Twitch doesn't want you to obfuscate your code. So in other words, what that means is don't feed it through a mangler so that it all ends up like, I's and slashes and parentheses that's not human readable. Basically, your code needs to be human readable. You can strip spaces, you can make it really small, but you cannot mangle your code so that it's unreadable. Twitch needs to be able to read your code. They want that. So that's another gotcha, and it's a common gotcha actually if you try to use out of the box utilities like Create React App, for instance. React App, when you bundle for production, it's going to optimize your code and try to do that. Okay, so you're done cooking your extension. You've done the HTML, you've done the JavaScript, you've done the CSS, you've done your stage testing, you've done all that type of stuff, you've bundled the assets, you got all that good. Now it's time to submit your extension for review. So you fill out all the information, all that type of stuff. What next? Now you just click that submit for review button. So when you click that submit for review button, you need to make sure to fill out all the information about your extension, all of its features. You have to be as verbose as possible. You need to explain how to test your extension. So explain how you test your extension from the broadcaster's perspective. How is a broadcaster going to use it? And then you need to explain how a viewer is going to use your extension. And then if your extension is dependent on a game or some other software, you need to make sure that that stuff is set up and ready to go for when a reviewer comes in and has to test it. So this means that if your extension's a video overlay extension, you need to install it on a test channel, and you actually need to have that stream running with that extension. So I'll give you a perfect example of this situation. For my stream closed captioner extension, it's a closed caption extension like you see at the bottom of the screen. Well, how is a tester going to test the closed captioning? So what I ended up doing is on a test channel, I had it up and running. I had the closed captioning extension installed, and I had it listening to an audiobook. I had it listening to the 20-hour audiobook because I don't know when they're going to test the extension. So I just had it reading through an audiobook for 20 hours. So in the morning before I went to work, I turned it on. I set the audiobook all the way to the beginning, and I just let it play through because you never know. So those are the type of things you have to watch out for and be prepared for. It can be a little annoying. There are people that complain about it on the Twitch dev server, but you need to be ready for some sort of weird testing interaction. Okay, so I talked about local test, hosted tests, submitting for review. So I just wanted to give a little timeline here of what it takes to go from extension cooking to serving it up. So we talked about local testing. So the website's running on your computer. You're loading your installed version in development, and you're using the testing base URI. Once you're ready from local test, you moved over to hosted testing. So you go your website, you upload it to the CDN, you're running your code in a production-like environment that's almost ready for release. And then we move over, and then after you're done with that, you submit for review. So now it's in review. Your extension submitted. It's out of hosted testing. You've done all the things. So now it is in Twitch's hand to see if it actually works, if it follows all functionality that's supposed to, if it follows all their guidelines, if you use the correct terminology, because you can't use terms like purchasing if you're using bits. There's all these little type of things that you have to watch out for. So after it's in review and it's been approved, that means it's ready for release. Because it's approved does not mean that it's automatically released. You'll get an email saying it's been approved. And all you have to do next is you have to go to the Twitch Dev dashboard and you have to click the button to go live. So once you click go live, that's when you can cheer, you can spray champagne everywhere. And the thing is, when you go live, is that there's only one version at a time running of the extension. So the moment you click go live, your extension's newly released and everyone gets the update. So that's when you can just party and have tons and tons of fun. And that's it. We go from writing your code, creating it, to release. And thanks everyone for enjoying the stream. I did create an example repo of the extension. You can reach it at talk2MeGooseman bare bones Twitch extension that has this exact code just with a little bit of more flavor in it. And you can reach me at talk2MeGooseman on Twitter, Twitch, and GitHub, and a couple other places, but those are the main one I want. So yeah, thanks everyone. And yeah, we can take questions if there are any questions. Or if you want to see anything on the UI. So out of the 4 extension types, which one is the easiest to build? I would say, from Mary Jo, I would say the panel one is the easiest one to develop. It allows for clicking links, and it allows for, and it's just like a little narrow, it's like a nav menu. It's the easiest to design for, and it's the most, I guess, feature rich in terms of the capabilities, especially since you can do outward linking. Actually, let me paste a link in the chat with what I had. So I can show a little preview of the developer rig since I went through this so fast. Do video extension, so Hugo Dahl, do the video extensions overlay and component appear on mobile devices for viewers? No. So if you're on mobile, the only thing that shows up is the mobile view for the extension. So if you create a video overlay extension, you would need to create a corresponding mobile extension. We have code. So yeah, so video overlays and stuff like that would just not show up. So but cooking extension sounds fun. I know. I was like, I had an epiphany. I'm like, you know what? We cook extensions, don't we? That's what my talk's gonna be on. Oh. Add Twitch panel with your current barbecue IoT thermometer readings. That is something you can absolutely 100% do. The nice thing about Twitch extensions is that you can actually scope them to your channel. So even though you've built an extension and you submitted it, you can whitelist an extension to be for specific channels. So you can whitelist an extension just to be for your channel. So your code can be hard coded to your IoT APIs and stuff like that for you to use. So if you have a barbecue stream, you can write an extension just for that and install that and use that. What if extension? Yeah. And it looks like we answered the question for the private extension. Do I need an example if I broadcaster wanting to use it? Yeah, for private extensions, it's as simple as a whitelist page. You just add it. You just add in the broadcaster's name, and it's whitelisted to that broadcaster alone. The common gotcha that happens with people is sometimes what people will do is during their testing phase, they'll accidentally whitelist to a broadcaster, and when they release that extension, it's whitelisted to that broadcaster only, and they're the only ones that can see it, and you cannot edit anything about a release. It's kind of like, I guess it's like kind of like the App Store. Once it's out there, it's just there. So then if you need to make an edit to the whitelisting of which broadcasters get it, you have to create a brand new release. Even if there's no code changes and you're just changing the whitelist, you have to make a version 102 and release that and and go through the whole entire review process. If you're fingers crossed that the review process happens quick, but it can take up to 72 hours before they can review your extension. Can you use WebAssembly in an extension? I believe so. I think WebAssembly is now permitted in an extension. I think that's a brand new one, but I could be mistaken. I was reviewing the documentation, and I believe it is permitted. Yeah, it wasn't original. Yeah, I'm getting confirmation. That it wasn't originally, but it is now. That doesn't seem very streamlined and a huge barrier. Do you think they will change this in the future? Flight Wizard, is that in reference your question? And that question's from Flight Wizard. Is your question in reference to the testing process with having to go live 24/7 stream? Yeah. This is a known issue that they've had, that they know about, and they say that they're trying to figure out ways to do it. But I can understand the challenge with that problem, because video overlays only appear when a channel's live. So there's no way for the tester to use the extension unless your channel's live. If you're testing I found that if you're testing a panel extension, the channel doesn't actually be live, because the tester just has to scroll down and look at the panel on the test channel. So that I would say this, and this is a callback to Mary's question, that what's the easiest to develop on. And that's why another reason why panels are easy to develop, because you don't have to worry about having a live channel feed and stuff like that. You just have to install it on a channel, set it up, and you don't have to worry about it being live. You just got to make sure that it's there living on the channel, and the tester / reviewer can go and take a look at it and click and do all sorts of stuff to verify what you say it does actually does. If you had to pick just one type of panel to build, which would you pick to spend your time on? If I had, and this is from Chef Brent, if I had to pick just one type of panel to build, which would you pick and spend your time on? Is this like in terms of feature, like if I was to build an extension, like a panel extension? Chef Brent? Because I have a new idea for a panel extension. Okay, so what I've built so far for panel extensions: I have built the GitHub Projects panel extension. I've built the Stream Team panel extension. I built a Better Information panel extension, or panel version. My Stream Closed Captioner also has a panel extension version, because since video overlays are very expensive real estate, I decided to allow them to install it as a panel extension. The nice thing about panel extensions is that they can pop out like an iframe. They can pop it out. So if they can't have it at video overlay, they can at least, and it's below the stream, the viewer can at least pop it out as a separate window and then bring it up close to the video. Yeah, so Oh, extension, not panel. Oh, okay. I would say the next extension I want. Okay, so I'll say the next extension I want to build for myself is I want to build an anime extension, anime manga extension. Basically, I want to build an extension that lists all the anime and manga that you are reading, watching, or have watched. Don't steal my idea. Actually, I have too much stuff on my plate. I'd love to work with someone to work on it, though, if someone wants to. Blue lava. Hello. How can I help you today? I don't know. That makes me more. That question makes me laugh because of the because Blue Lava's profile face, um, profile picture. Seeing that question, but yeah, if you have any questions, John Blue Lava is our Twitch dev real person, so you can pester him about any additional questions. But you can always reach out to me and ask me questions. I'm working on plenty of extensions, constantly working on new stuff, and I love helping people and work on it. I've been doing this for ever since extensions were first released. I've been working on them. All right, everyone. Thanks everyone for the questions and everything. Give me the blue flames, please.